Alrighty, everyone, the championship is over. Thank you for taking a stop at the Palmetto pit stop. I am Tony, back here with Adam, recapping everything. The NASCAR season is over. Joey Logano, a three-time champion, solidifying his name amongst a lot of greats. And we are now left with the postseason, recapping everything that happened, looking ahead. Adam, what'd you think of that championship race? The playoff has now ended.
Yeah, it was a boring start, I gotta say, in my opinion. Not a great beginning of the race, but it felt like once Ryan Blaney was sent on offense, that's when things got really exciting.
Got cooking a little bit.
Exactly, and I was really pulling for my prediction to come through.
It was close.
One.
Yeah, no, I know. Trust me.
Good
I was
prediction.
it's like, damn, Adam's probably gonna get this one. Blaney was looking good. He was looking good, but just Logano wanted it. He got it, and he really is just solidifying his name up there. You know, the back-to-back would have been really cool for Blaney, but Logano just continues to keep up with that success with being still one of those guys that was, just a little bit more of a household name or has become that, and he's been in the sport a good while now, trying to keep his name up there and stay above water from the young guns. They're chasing him, swimming after him, whatever analogy you want to use here.
Yeah, I mean, when I started watching the sport, Joey Logano was the baby face. He was the brand new kid, one of the youngest winners in NASCAR history.
Right?
And now he's one of the longest tenured drivers. So it really goes to show that how much of his career has gone by. And I mean, earlier in the season, up until Nashville, I think it is, where they had 5 overtimes and he got his win there, it seemed like Joey Logano was starting to fade. And he won, obviously, that race. Probably should have won Richmond had Austin Dillon not taken him out. Got the All-Star win, of course. And then winning at Atlanta, winning at Vegas. Wins when it matters. And under this format, under this format, that's what you have to do to win. It's a shame that some of the guys that we were watching all year, it seemed like that didn't even matter in this race. Tyler Reddick winning his way in at Homestead, winning the regular season championship. Almost a non-factor in the race, sadly. Lowest finishing of the 4. William Byron, he was up there, but just was not enough. Didn't have it for the Penske guys. It was basically a Blaney Logano day. It seemed like it was almost inevitable it was going to come down to those two.
Yeah, but it was a pretty good battle up there at the front. Yeah, I caught a good amount of the race that I was able to, flipping back and forth between a lot of sports. It was a jam-packed Sunday of sports, but just trying to keep a focus on the race. Yeah, of course I was pulling for my guy, Reddick, but he just was always seemingly lagging a little bit behind. It really did get down to, as you just stated, 2 horses, neck and neck, who's going to be the final one to, finally get that nose across the finish line first. And it still was a little bit more entertaining towards the end. But yeah, nothing too crazy, nothing groundbreaking. And this is something I personally saw. There's been a whole mess of things on social media to the point of, I would say, negativity, at least with the excitement surrounding the championship. And a lot of people feel like that it was lacking. I think you just talked about this. We were just discussing before the podcast. Some just testing that to the format of the playoff, just maybe not as much even marketing around it, and it just seeming a little bit more lackluster than what it should have been.
Yeah, I mean, the championship in this format really tries to aim to create these Game 7 moments.
You should.
And unfortunately, what I think NASCAR fails to recognize is that Game 7 moments don't happen every single week. Game 7 moments are once, maybe twice a year. And there is a reason why Game 7 moments are so big. In the World Series, a walk-off home run. Just in the playoffs, going to Game 7 and getting that big play that flips everything on its head. They're so great because there was Games 1 through 6. And unfortunately, in this format, it feels like the fans are robbed of Games 1 through 6 when everything is treated like a Game 7. And it's only that way because it's made to be that way. It is not an organic Game 7. We have had organic Game 7s, organic Game 7 moments in NASCAR before this style format, and I think the fans, it's finally worn out its welcome. There's been a call for this format to change a lot, and I think this year was just the breaking point. I've never seen NASCAR fans this angry at NASCAR itself. You've had, of course, people who don't like drivers. They don't like calls. They don't like the style of racing or whatever, but this is fans angry at the sport itself, and it's very rarely that you see that.
Just overall, and at a time of the year when you should be celebrating, oh yeah, great year, great championship. Let's give Logano his due. He is really putting his name up on a legendary status, and that just kind of falls by the wayside a little bit by the amount of people that are unhappy in general with the sport, and just seemingly just having that lack of interest that should be there. This is such a big event. You would think, there's a lot of great sporting events going on that day, a lot of basketball, a lot of football, and I feel like a lot of the viewership for people that share an interest in multiple sports like you and I do, more of the sports junkies, we're trying to maybe just flip around a little bit or didn't really have as much of an interest. There's just not that casual fan wanting to watch it as well. You're going to always have your diehard people and those who love their drivers, especially those that were actually in the Final Four, but you're still lacking that capacity of someone just flipping it on saying, oh, hey, yeah, the NASCAR championship's on today. Got to watch that. Got to have a party for that. Got to sit down and this is going to be much-watched TV or, streaming, whatever. But that just didn't feel like that was the case to me personally.
No, it did not feel as big as it should, and it's because in trying to build up to something much bigger, NASCAR has made it smaller. It's made its worth less. Joey Logano is now in the same category as drivers like Tony Stewart, Darrell Waltrip, these 3-time champions.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And it does not feel like he's anywhere close to that.
No, right?
And you don't want to take it away from Joey Logano. Joey Logano, his team, Penske, they've played this system they've played it perfectly. They did what they had to. They won in the regular season. They've won in the first round when they needed to.
Yeah.
They won in the third round when they needed to. And then they won the final race.
No, he had an incredible end to the year. And that's the thing, the negativity surrounding some of the aspects and the structure of it, it does take away from the great effort that he put forward. And he really did. It was a fantastic run by Logano.
It was. His race at Phoenix, it was as great as it could be without it being an absolute clinic, really. But fans aren't going to see that because it's not rewarding. If it's one thing if you're a fan of a team that makes it to the championship and then they lose because it's, oh, my team lost. I'm unhappy with the outcome because we lost. But most fans of that sport will look at it and go, okay, the team that caught fire won, and it's in a deserving format. But in NASCAR, it's my biggest gripe on social media is that people will use stick and ball rules and playoffs to try to justify the NASCAR playoffs. So the difference between something like the Yankees and the Dodgers were on the brink of elimination against the Padres. They had to go to Game 5, winner take all, and they won that game. And then they would go on to win the World Series. If they had lost that game and the Padres end up going on the same run and just swap paths, for example, and then beat the Yankees, no one's debating the Padres as being the best team in baseball because they won when it mattered. But they're playing one team at a time. There's no way. The best way I could describe it is if the Chiefs right now, undefeated, if they win out and go to the Super Bowl and they lose to, I don't know, the Eagles. They lose to the Eagles in the Super Bowl. The Eagles won the championship under a legit format that everyone understands. The Jets, who have 3 wins on the season, they have 3 wins or they have 4? I can't remember.
Team, I don't know. You tell me. I know it's not a lot.
Not a lot. I think it might be 3 wins. But the Jets cannot impact the Chiefs in the playoffs. But Harrison Burton, for example, or Kaz spinning on the backstretch can impact Christopher Bell trying to go for the championship. Shane Van Gisbergen could blow a tire, and while Tyler Reddick was in the lead, and then a restart shuffles Reddick out of the lead and he could get eliminated. So having everyone on the field at once is much different than a stick and ball sport where you're playing one person at a time or one team at a time.
Yeah, everyone's out there as an individual. That's how racing is, whether it is track and field, whether it's horses racing, whether it's cars racing. That is how it is. It is one person and you have an objective to try and win.
Yes, you have to do better than as best as you can against everybody competing.
That's right.
And that's why I think this playoff format doesn't work, because you are playing everybody. So it's not like the Jets can lose a game when they're not playing. Like if the Chiefs are playing the Broncos and they tie, the Jets aren't going to get bumped out of the playoffs in week 3, just an example. It just wouldn't make any sense because it doesn't have an impact on them. But, or maybe I should have used it as an example. Let's say Broncos and Chiefs tie, and then an NFC team gets a bump, like the Buccaneers, for example. They're not at all impacted by the win-loss of a AFC team, yet we're going to use that same logic to try to apply it to NASCAR. And it just doesn't work because everyone races everyone every weekend. If you're getting points in this sport, you are racing every weekend. And it just doesn't make sense to put this elimination style format in. And I think that's why fans are finally voicing their, it's not even concerns at this point, voicing their demand to change this format. Because at this point, it's just not rewarding to anybody really to win this championship, to watch this season. Because what does it matter?
It's unfortunate to look at it that way, but that's where it feels like we're at for the time being, especially just from everything that we've gone over. It is going to be a disservice to the champion because people can't just be celebrating the win, and also just a disservice overall to the sport, to the fans, because you are just getting some people that are getting to the point of disinterest that they're leaving or not going to be wanting to show up in stands, and that's going to be, of course, hurting sponsors and hurting the amount of money put in people's pocket, which, no matter what, is the biggest driver for many things. And that's something that I would love to see grow. You would love to see grow. You want to see that trend in a positive direction. You don't want to see more people, even if it's in small droves, leaving the sport in those droves or not having, really a big interest to watch next year because it's just like, man, I got to watch that again. I'm not going to watch NASCAR again until they change the format again or go back to maybe something else that worked or a little bit more maybe during the heyday of NASCAR. It's an opinion game, but it just seems that is still the overarching opinion, that the vast majority of fans don't like the current format, and it would probably serve NASCAR better and be better off for your drivers to make that change and get a board together, get these decisions together, just going down the road, quite frankly.
Yeah, and they need to stop being afraid of this criticism. I mean, you go on social media and you have these fans being upset, and the first thing you see are people who get paid by NASCAR calling the fans' criticism invalid. Like Kyle Petty, he said, the only reason you don't like this format is because you don't have a championship. It's like, what kind of outlook on the situation is that? It's like, one, Kyle Petty doesn't have a championship either, so I don't know what he's talking about. Two, drivers, Brad Keselowski has been one of the loudest detractors of the playoff format of active drivers. He has a championship under the old, under the 2011-ish format when he won in 2012. And that was a deserving championship because you could still get these deserving champions once in a while. I mean, Kyle Larson in 2021, even in this format, was dominant all year. 10 wins.
He was so good.
He was crazy.
Oh, my God, yeah.
When he won the championship, it didn't expose a flaw in it because he was dominating every race anyway.
Just too good.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Some guys can be too good, and it doesn't even matter what it is. It's like, you are clearly the best driver. There's no doubt about it. There's nothing unfair here. You prove that you are the best by having that amount of wins and that amount of dominance. But that's a rare season. That's not going to happen all the time.
No, and I get annoyed at NASCAR wanting to get away from this rewarding excellence thing. Because in 1998... Jeff Gordon had one of the greatest seasons of all time. He has the most wins in the modern era of NASCAR. 13 wins. He had an average finish, I think, like just under 6. Like, insane. Closest thing you'll get to, like, the Bulls in the 90s.
Yeah.
For NASCAR. It was insane, the clinic that went on. And it still was a close championship to a degree because Mark Martin was having one of the best seasons of the 90s at the same time. He had 8 wins. Over half the races on the season in 1998 were won by Jeff Gordon and Mark Martin. So instead of trying to manufacture a playoff there, They said these are our sport's best two athletes right now. These are the two that we're going to be propping up because they're winning everything. So I don't know why NASCAR is so afraid to reward dominance. They think that it's going to take away from them for some reason. But in reality, all this current format is doing is taking away from excellence, because the guy who was the most consistent all over around the year, Christopher Bell, he would have won under the Latford system, the points format used up until 2003. He would have won, and it would have been deserving. He was very consistent, especially in the play once the last 10 races started. Mm-hmm. He was very consistent, one of the best in those final 10 races. He did have some finish issues. I think he had like 8 finishes outside the top 30 in the regular season, so it wasn't super consistent, but he tightened it up when it mattered. He made up about 400 points on Tyler Reddick in 10 races under the old format. So that would have been exciting to watch. Watching a guy essentially have a 2011 Tony Stewart, where he goes from a non-thought in the championship to winning the championship in the final race by 5 points. These Game 7 moments can happen. It's just the last 10 races would have been your games 1 through 6. And then it would have been so much more exciting, in my opinion, to, instead of having, okay, well, we had to wait around 30 minutes last week to figure out who our Final Four was, have Joey Logano win at Vegas, and he can just sit around lowering his average finish for the next 2 races. We go into the final race of the season. Here's Tyler Reddick. He was leading the championship up until Vegas, and then he flipped to lose it. You have Chase Elliott, who's been insanely consistent this year. You have Kyle Larson. He missed a race and still ended up in the top 5 in points. And then you have Christopher Bell. If he has a great finish, which he did, he wins a championship. So all this format is doing is, it's not even incentivizing winning, it's just incentivizing when you win. Because you could win 3 races on the season and you're just about good for the championship. And I know NASCAR wants to incentivize winning, but I mean, the winningest driver this year wasn't even in the Final Four with Kyle Larson. He had 6 wins. So
it's tough. Yeah,
it's tough.
It is tough. Trust me, I get it. And this is something, as much as, we try to keep it around NASCAR, but, we do like to reference other sports, because that's just a good example of what is driving people to those other sports. Yes, it is because they love their team. Yes, because they love, certain gameplay or just love the sport in general. But it's superstars. You gotta have superstars. People love superstars. They're the ones, it could be a little bit annoying to other fans. It can get repetitive sometimes, but just that's what sells, really big names across all these sports, for better or for worse, whether it's, the Tom Brady's of the world, the LeBron James of the world, women's basketball, the Caitlin Clarks of the world, people that are continuing to get more of this national coverage in the sports realm, turning to these, bigger platforms, or, Ohtani in baseball for, the Dodgers. To me, like when I'm seeing highlights, when I'm just casually watching coverage, whether it's, Sports Center or maybe one of the shows on FS1, it's just such a small amount of the coverage is given to NASCAR because, again, you just don't have that star power that some of these other athletes have. And those are team sports. That's the thing. You're still a part of a team, but you just set yourself apart as the upper echelon of these athletes, and, you become a celebrity in yourself. And sometimes, as, again, annoying as that could be to a certain amount of fans, that's just what you need to draw mainstream attention. And that is not in the NASCAR realm right now. You could even reference Talladega Nights, like Ricky Bobby as a racer, because, he was fun. He was a superstar, fictional character. But, again,
he was exciting.
Exactly. He was exciting, and you could even go back to, that point in NASCAR,
that was at its peak, 2005, 2006 was NASCAR's peak.
That's when, we talked about this before, that's when you saw these racers and guys that were in all these coverage breakdowns and commercials, getting these big sponsorship deals. Like, you couldn't, watch, TV, I don't think, any day, depending on what you're watching, and with all these sponsors, without seeing a NASCAR driver in a commercial. Now it's very far and in between.
Yeah, it's usually you'll only see a NASCAR driver in a commercial if you're watching a NASCAR race.
Yeah, now
which
it's just,
doesn't really help because you're already watching the
no.
race.
Now it's just Travis Kelce.
Yeah, now it's yeah, exactly. The NFL is NASCAR made this playoff format because they wanted to contest. They wanted to compete with NASCAR,
Of
or they
course.
wanted to compete with the NFL, and still in their own sport to this day, the NFL is out marketing them because they are in the middle of your championship race that people really hate. You now see Travis Kelce, or you'll see Aaron Judge or Saquon Barkley, like someone from another sport.
Yeah, of course.
And instantly much more recognizable because, I mean, if baseball is outperforming you in marketability, I think that's kind of crazy because the MLB has no idea how to market their superstars. They just post Shohei Ohtani all over Instagram and call it a day.
Yeah.
But
To that point, they will post plays and, your great aspects of the game, the highlights and lowlights. But, yeah, because I don't know a lot about these guys. I would love to know about, some of these big players and their personalities and, more of their background. But, no, you don't get that from baseball a lot. You kind of just coast on throughout the season because it is a very, very long season and that's that. And, yeah, you get the highlight plays that you'll see on social media from time to time, but nothing too crazy.
No, and I think NASCAR is really lacking in that category. I mean, they're releasing their second season. The name is escaping me, but the Netflix series that NASCAR they had their first season last year, released in January of this year, covering the playoffs of the 2023 season. They are releasing season 2, and Chase Elliott, NASCAR's perennial most popular driver, just said he's not in it. He's like not interested. And it's up to, I don't want to say it's up to drivers because it's not up to the drivers to market their sport, but it's only a good thing if you do, So it could be NASCAR's not good at marketing, and it's not that maybe guys in NASCAR just aren't interested in being marketed. Denny Hamlin is on the complete opposite side. He gave them full access. He's like, yeah, follow me around, go into my house, follow me at the track. Absolutely. He was all for it, and people were complaining. It's like, why was Denny Hamlin the focus point of this Netflix series? He's the one who gave him the most access, and Netflix loved him for it.
Yeah,
they had some good coverage with Denny Hamlin because he was like, capture everything you need from me. And Chase Elliott, the guy who your entire fan base loves, is not interested in sharing anything about himself. So that's not on Chase Elliott, but it's not great for the sport if your guys don't want to be marketed. They have a few guys they could go to. I think even if Chase Elliott, he could be like his dad and win the most popular driver the rest of his career. But what I think NASCAR should do is not focus on that, but they should focus on the guys they do have. Bubba Wallace, for better or worse, is known to people not in the NASCAR fan base, all because of, things that have happened in the past. You have a guy there. He is likable. He has a personality.
Well, probably if you actually get to know him.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's like maybe get to know these guys and just see hey, normal people, they do this. Maybe they have this something in common with you. Hey, they're a family man. You don't think about that stuff all the time.
Yeah, and then I think the biggest gold mine that NASCAR is just sitting on is Ryan Blaney. This dude is a hothead when he's in the car. He's an attractive dude, so you can put him anywhere. You can get him on these TV shows. I mean, one of the biggest drawing points for when I was growing up, if I ran into like a girl classmate when I was like in 5th or 6th grade or something, they would be fawning over like Casey Kane because he was the pretty boy.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, so
I remember. You're right.
Yeah.
I remember even seeing like girls in high school, and again,
they would get like posters of
I've
them
seen
and stuff.
wearing a couple Casey Kane shirts. And again, this is rural Pennsylvania, but no, it makes sense.
Yeah, so you can get these. You have an untapped market of NASCAR drivers. You can have your superstar. Your superstars right now, they're Denny Hamlin, they're Kyle Larson. You have Joey Logano right now if you want to market him. I'm not sure how popular that would be right now, but you could. You have Christopher Bell, he's just super consistent. Chase Elliott, maybe try to talk to him about it. Just like, can we please market you? Then you have your personalities. Ryan Blaney, a big one, like I said. Bubba Wallace, Denny Hamlin again. And then you could just get just get the guys in, and I don't know, what are those clothing ads, basically. Just make them like in the, like models like back in the day. They would just get a clothing brand to market them and put them in on websites and on Instagram and all that stuff. But you have guys like Ryan Blaney, they're good looking dudes. Go out there and market him to a new demographic. And NASCAR, I think, is just... NASCAR's fans as a whole are very much set in the past, like very focused on what used to be.
Well, because that's when everyone can agree it was just the best era of it. That era,
it was.
The
those
90s,
90s and 2000s were a great era of NASCAR.
Yes.
And I think NASCAR needs to really just try to figure out why that was. And one of the biggest things is it's not the playoffs, it's not the car. The biggest thing I think of NASCAR in the 2000s was marketability. And that was consistent sponsors. That was superstars. That was marketing your guys. To this day, if you ask a non-NASCAR fan to name any race car driver, it's still probably Dale Earnhardt or Jeff Gordon. Now, if you ask them now, it's like, could you name a NASCAR driver now? And they'd probably say, like, is Dale Jr. still racing?
Right. Like, something to Jeff Gordon. Does he still get out there?
Yeah, does Jeff Gordon whine once in a while? Maybe. It's like, maybe Jimmy Johnson. It's like, well, yeah, technically.
But no. It's...
Yeah, you're not doing a good job of getting your sport out there. And it sucks because I know that in especially the last 3 weeks when Tony wasn't here to reel me back in, I've done nothing but complain about the sport. But this is a sport that has an exciting past, and we know what it can be because it used to be that. So all of these things, NASCAR they have a lot on their hands this offseason. I don't think they're fixing all of this before February, but you can't just sit on your hands. You have to do something. Your fans are upset because you have a format that doesn't reward consistency. Your fans are upset because you don't have recognizable cars every week. Your fans are upset because they don't have marketed drivers. You don't have superstars in your sport. And I think those are really, if you can fix, and then you could throw in a fourth one, which is they don't like the car because we're just not a fan. It's supposed to be stock cars. They're not a fan of spec cars. So if you could fix 2 of these in the offseason and prove you are listening to fans, NASCAR, that's going to be a huge step forward for them. And I don't know if they'll even do any of that. They could end up making a new playoff format that's even dumber than this one. So who knows?
Let's hope not, though. Let's hope it's going to be something just going into the short term that they could promise some type of change, or at least just to the point of, hey, we hear you, we see you as fans, and we want to make sure you guys are happy. We want to see this sport actually gain some of that attention again, and that might require a 180 on this current format. I don't have an answer for it. There's certain people in power that oversee NASCAR that hopefully will. But as it stands right now, the season has ended, and Logano is your champion. Blaney right there behind him, then Byron, and then Reddick. So that's your final 4. And, of course, there's been a good amount of shakeups, good amount of doubts, good amount of disappointments. But all in all, this is easily something that could change within the next few years if the fans are actually heard. And also just one more point to that marketability too. When we're talking about some of these smaller and upcoming teams, you have really big celebrities and guys that are owning some of these teams. You have Pitbull with Trackhouse. You have, of course, 23XI with MJ, Michael Jordan. I mean, come on. These are some big names just in sports and entertainment that could easily do, maybe even better jobs on their own part, just trying to reel in their fan bases, somehow to just get some more eyes on the sport. If they could, I don't know.
Yeah, I've seen, I think it might have been Bleacher Report or maybe The Score. I think it might have been Bleacher Report. But they did a segment, maybe a few-minute video on social media, talking about Michael Jordan in NASCAR. And there were people in the comments like, I had no idea Michael Jordan owned a NASCAR team.
Oh, right.
You have Michael Jordan, of course, one of the most recognizable athlete names in history.
Yes.
He is he's bigger in your sport, and he does not drive a car every week. So if you can take advantage of that, get him, get Pitbull, get the guys like that who have the money and the resources and the recognition.
Yes.
That was just the word I was trying
They
to
do
get
be.
to. Get all of that and just go with it. These guys have massive, massive followings.
They do, yeah, no.
And
Trust me, I know.
when I was getting back into NASCAR, because I was into NASCAR from 2007, and then Tony Stewart, he was my driver, retired in 2016. I followed for a bit, probably got to around 2018, 2019. That's whenever they rolled out the 550 package, the 550 horsepower. That was just really bad racing. Really pulled back from the sport. Finally got back into it in probably about midway through 2022, about midway. And that's when I found out that Pitbull was in the sport. And then I was like, oh, okay. I can root for, Ross Chastain, a guy who's crazy when he drives, and Daniel Suarez, I'll root for him too. And then as I got more into it and I ended up really liking Bubba Wallace, and I found out that his team was owned by MJ. It's like, all right. So you can easily use these owners as marketing, and it would at least incentivize some of the fans to give it a try. And it's just going to depend on, you could get some fans who watch NASCAR because of them already, but they don't like what they see because of this format. It's too confusing for an average fan or a casual fan. These cars aren't exciting enough, and it's hard to recognize the drivers in these always changing paint schemes every week, or wraps now. But there is a lot for NASCAR to fix,
But see,
and not a lot of time to do so.
That's a good point that you just made, and this is just really something. You just got to keep looking in the past. There's just nothing iconic. Like, you knew the car, you knew the driver. They went hand in hand because it was just so recognizable. The paint schemes, the number, the color. That is something that was always instilled during these earlier seasons. But now, that consistency isn't there, and that will make people upset. I can even attest to that with working in television and just news personalities, people on TV. There's a lot of people that don't want to see change because they either like a certain driver or like a certain personality on TV. They identify with that person. They've become a fan of that person. And when things are changing, or you're continuing to see maybe some of these younger guys or some of these drivers that you're trying to latch onto, but maybe they don't last, and it's just at the bottom half of the roster, it's tough to make that climb sometimes. So you're limiting the amount of fans that are trying to maybe latch onto and pick a new driver and become a fan of them, or just in general having your top 10, 12 guys, have a couple of them break out as true superstars in the sport again, becoming mainstream personalities, guys you see in the media a lot. But all of that, again, is all part of the issue as well. So, and here we are, though,
Yep. At the end of the season, it feels bad that I am okay not watching NASCAR the next few weeks. Because just aside from Homestead, it feels like it's just been bad decision after bad decision for NASCAR. So to not have a controversy, possibly, who knows what's going to happen with the playoffs, who knows what's going to happen with the 2311 case and Front Row Motorsports. It's just nice to at the very least, NASCAR won't be making any questionable rulings on a race outcome, at least until February. So it is nice to just get a nice.
It's like the no news is good news.
No news is good news.
For you right now.
And just pray that the 2025 season will be better. But unfortunately, we had a lot of goodbyes this year.
Because, end of the season.
End of the season always comes with
other changes.
With changes.
What's going on, Adam?
There comes a lot of... it's sad to think about with, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a Tony Stewart fan, but Stewart-Haas Racing has officially ran their final race. Got their final win in the Xfinity Series with Riley Earps stealing a win at Phoenix. They got their last championship last year with Cole Custer, and their last Cup Series win in the Southern 500, fittingly, in the 14 car with Chase Briscoe. And Stewart-Haas Racing, I think, though Tony Stewart got me into racing itself, I think it was Stewart-Haas that kept me very entertained once Tony Stewart's performance began to decline. because that happened. Let's see. I think Tony Stewart really began to fall off performance-wise. What was it? Probably 2013, 2014, maybe?
That sounds, yeah, definitely middle 2010s.
Yeah, and once that happened, especially when he started missing times due to injury and other things that don't have to be mentioned now, I really didn't have drivers to root for. I would root, my mom, Denny Hamlin, is a Denny Hamlin fan. My dad was a Kyle Busch fan, so I was kind of pulling for them. But I didn't really have as much of an attachment to those guys. So I would root for Stewart-Haas drivers. It was exciting in 2014 with Kevin Harvick, who I liked anyway, and to have him as a Cup Series, or have him racing for my favorite driver's team, was exciting to watch him win the championship. And it's just a shame that was only the second of two for the team, at least in the Cup Series. It always felt like Stewart-Haas was meant to do a lot more, meant to be possibly even a dynasty. And they probably should have, if depending on this format, because Kevin Harvick was statistically the best driver of the 2010s. Under the old format, I think he would have won 4 championships in the 2010s. 2020, especially if 2020 ended up being a championship year for Kevin Harvick, which it probably should have, would have been a great season to look back on for him. 8 wins, of course, just dominance, and a shame that he also didn't get a win in his final season. I mean, inches away at Talladega, though, ended up getting disqualified after the race. But Tony Stewart, all the drivers that went through, creating some great moments at Stewart-Haas. Tony, of course, his first win coming in the All-Star race, but the first points-paying win for Stewart-Haas coming out of home track. For me, being Pocono Raceway in 2009. The one Pocono race I didn't attend.
Of course.
was the race my favorite driver won at.
Oh, my goodness.
Of course, the 2011 playoffs. I would love to do just a deep dive into that, because the 2011 playoffs might have been the greatest version of the greatest result of the playoffs that NASCAR has ever had. And the chase, just winning 5 of 10 and still having it come down to a tiebreaker with Carl Edwards. Fantastic. Of course, Kurt Busch's redemption story, everything that happened in the early portion of his career, just for him to come back, get a Daytona 500 victory, be able to really fix his image after everything that happened. Ryan Newman coming through the team, Eric Almirola having a few wins here and there, and ultimately coming to what they were in 2023, when it almost seemed like the writing was on the walls, and the shop announcing that they'll be selling off their charters and going to just the Haas factory team, a one-car team, with Tony Stewart exiting the sport. And it's bittersweet to look at, because it was, for as sad as it is to end, that is a team with a lot of history in a short amount of time. So great to see that they were able to get a win, especially at a crown jewel. I don't know. Oh, they were. I think they were. They might have been able to get a win at every crown jewel, but I would have to do a little research
Just
on
since
that.
their inception.
Since their inception, yes. Because I know Tony Stewart had 2 Brickyard wins, but that was when he was with Gibbs. Kevin Harvick had a Coke 600, but I think that was when he was in the 29. Kurt Busch had the Daytona 500, and Chase Briscoe had, of course, the Southern 500 this year. But even still, a lot of good memories there. And speaking of good memories, a legend, champion Hall of Famer, future Hall of Famer, Martin Truex Jr. concludes his incredible comeback career. Martin Truex Jr. starting his career sort of in the at the sunset of Dale Earnhardt Incorporated, as that team began to really go under, driving the one car. He got a win in I believe in 2007 was his first win at Dover. Then I think he went about 4 years without a win again. And if you were watching during that time, and then would be told that in 2017 he would have had one of the most dominant championship seasons we've ever seen, it would have seemed crazy. Martin Truex Jr. still, like I said, champion. Uh, don't have his number of race wins on the top of my head. Let me double check here, just to be sure.
So I mean, sometimes you just have that like an encyclopedia, though. But
I
luckily,
should.
luckily, Google does exist, so that is
Yes,
we
sir.
appreciate that.
Yeah, so 34 Cup wins
Okay.
and a champion. Of course, getting the pole in his last career race.
Yep.
Racing that red, almost candy apple colored car, a throwback to his first career start. It's really sad to think that he's another driver leaving the sport. It seems like it is a perfect time. When he announced it, I thought it was going to be a few years too early, but just judging how things have gone for him in the last few months, I think this is a perfect time for him to sort of hang it up. It is a shame that he did not get at least like one more crack at the championship, but sort of how things go in this sport, especially right now. Truex, I think, is the first driver, at least from what I can remember, who I've watched, to have such a long career, and I've watched every win of his. And just to see all of that, see his legacy change from a guy who won in the dying days of DEI, and then he had a sort of career resurgence with Michael Waltrip Racing. Then when that team went under, he goes to Furniture Row and wins a championship for Furniture Row. It proves what kind of driver he is. And I hope that, he said I believe he is at least coming back for the Daytona 500. So it's not the last time you'll see him on the track. But it is crazy to think a driver like him, who was so talented and so consistent throughout his years in good equipment, that just never got a chance to win on a super speedway. And then in sadder news, of course, NASCAR legend Bobby Allison passing away recently. I think he's a 4-time champ, 85 career wins.
Man, oh man.
One of the golden boys in the Alabama gang in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s. Of course, he has his own tale of tragedy and triumph, losing his sons, Davey and was that Clifford? Davey Allison, one of NASCAR's brightest stars at the time of his passing, was involved in one of the greatest, if not the greatest, races of all time in the 1992 NASCAR Championship finale. It's just a name. The Allisons were super important in the formation of what NASCAR would be remembered as, especially in the 80s and 90s, in those boxy cars that I absolutely love. But unfortunate for unfortunate for his family, but a legacy that nobody will soon forget, with all those wins and championships. And as we were talking about marketing earlier, another goodbye we have to make is to FedEx.
That's right.
FedEx
They're getting out of the sport.
leaving the sport. Denny Hamlin, of course, they were in before Denny Hamlin. They sponsored, Jason Leffler's 11 at Joe Gibbs. But they've been the signature sponsor for Denny Hamlin for his entire career. One of the most recognizable pairings, possibly the last great pairing to this day from that golden age.
That's exactly what I mean. It's just, it transcends even to the point of marketing. It's just like, oh yeah, the FedEx car. Oh yeah,
that's Denny Hamlin.
The guy in the purple and orange. Yeah, I know him. Even if you're just a casual fan. But I've seen that car before, of course.
Yeah, and it's a shame to see how many sponsors have left NASCAR in the last few years. Even just Joe Gibbs. I mean, FedEx leaving Joe Gibbs. They lost M&M's when Kyle Busch left. NASCAR as a whole has lost Miller. I can't even remember all the sponsors they've lost off the top of my head. It seems like they just keep losing them. And I don't know if that's a testament to NASCAR not having the reach that they used to, or maybe it's just too expensive now to sponsor. And that's why we do see a lack of consistent sponsorship, every week, and everyone's always has a different brand on their car every single week, and it makes it hard to market them because you don't really know who that is anymore. So there's only a handful of consistent drivers each and every week that have similar cars, and I think it's probably like Tyler Reddick, who has like 3 cars with what is that, Monster, the Beast, and Air Jordan. You have, of course, Joey Logano, who's had Pennzoil ever since he's went to Penske. And now you also have Kyle Larson with Hendrick on his.
I was gonna say, yeah, exactly, just with his own team. Yeah, okay.
Funded himself, and it's never easy to say to have a longtime sponsor like that leave your sport. It really does stink because a lot of people aren't a fan of advertising, but you associate these things with drivers, and it feels like it's really an end of an era for Denny Hamlin to have had FedEx on his car for so long, and now next year, who knows what it'll be. He's had Mavis, he's had...
See, I do love the Mavis scheme, though. I love the green and the yellow. I mean, personally for him, that's my favorite. Of course, the FedEx is the iconic one, but I do love when he has the Mavis. Discount tire cars.
Yeah, because Mavis is good. I like their schemes. Some people, are not as big of fans. I think he also has sports clips. He's ran some interstate batteries, but I more associate that with the 18 car. Why can't I remember? Bobby Labonte back in the day, back in the 2000s. And of course, Kyle Busch back in the 2010s and early 2020s. But who knows what it's going to be next year? Who knows if... And we also could be saying goodbye to 2311 if things don't go well for them in court. No one really knows how they're going to be running next year, if running at all, depending on how lawsuits, or not the lawsuit, but how the court proceedings go. We could see Reddick and Bubba in different cars next year.
It's possible. So, I said, but that would suck if things can't be at least the same as they are. They can continue to build on their seasons. Reddick, if he can just keep doing what he's doing and being a great driver, making good decisions, and having some great runs this past year. Regular season champion, and then Bubba just has to find that extra gear as well. And I do hope that legal proceedings don't keep them handicapped in that regard, because it's, it is nice to see some of these young guns, these guys trying to come up and, make a name for themselves. And Bubba is definitely on the short list of drivers for guys trying to make that next leap from, more of the middle of the pack, fringe bubble, making the playoff to, trying to be, one of those top 16 guys or top 10 consistently, regardless of whatever the format is going to be in the future.
Yeah, I think Bubba can do it. He just needs to put it all together. Of course, he's getting a new crew chief next year. So things will be different for the 23 team, assuming the 23 team exists next year. But we've been negative for long enough, so a little more positive things.
Yeah. What's up?
Carson Hocevar, Rookie of the Year.
Yes.
Very excited about that.
Great year for him.
I know that he's a bit of a controversial figure, just the way he drives. Him himself is a very entertaining person, especially on social media. If you don't follow Carson Hocevar on Twitter, he's a very entertaining person. He's very funny. I think he deserves it. He has some talent there that just needs to be molded. A very promising and bright future for him. I don't know if he'll be a career guy at Spire, but if he is, it looks like it's going to be a good place for him. Spire, of course, the technical alliance with Hendrick Motorsports, and if you have an alliance with Hendrick, you're probably going to be in a good spot. So I would love to see him in the playoffs, make a run at the playoffs next year, steal a win here and there. I think if you're Carson Hocevar, I think a win is what you're searching for as a milestone next year. This year, of course, just getting your feet wet, get used to the competition, and he has made his errors as a driver, but he's young. He's going to make those mistakes. He jumped from the trucks to the Cup, so he's still getting used to this format of or this style of vehicle.
Yeah, getting his feet wet.
Yep. And I can't wait to see what he does in his career. I think he does have the makings of a potential champion if they keep this style of format. It'll be interesting to see the race between him and Ty Gibbs to see who can get their first win. Ty Gibbs, maybe even throw in Noah Gragson into that conversation. I think that there's three drivers. These three drivers are some of the brightest for the sport right now. At least in the future, as we lose some of these older guys, Kevin Harvick last year, Truex this year. Next year, we could, see some of the older guys go as well. I mean, Kyle Busch, his season came to an end, ending a 20-year, or putting an end to the possibility of a 20-year win streak. So that's another thing we had to say goodbye to was Kyle Busch's 19-year win streak. Unfortunately, went winless this year, but now, if anybody comes close to 19 years straight of winning, I would be impressed. I would be shocked. But that's still likely a few years off. If anybody, might be somebody like Larson or actually, I wonder if there's an active driver right now close. I mean, it could be Logano. Hamlin, I think, is gone back to 2019, so that's still like 5 years at best, and he's not racing another 14 years. That's
probably
for
not.
sure.
No, yeah, probably not. There's a typical cutoff time for a lot of these guys. And, when you stop racing, you're not that old, but it's how it is in a lot of different sports. You just reach a certain age where it gets a little bit tougher to hit those turns, to, have your body go through what it does during these races, because it can be pretty rough when you're zooming around in one of these cars. It's, it takes a toll, no doubt.
Yeah, I would like to know who would be the closest. I believe Kyle Busch broke Rusty Wallace's record. I'm not sure what the number is there. But Kyle Busch, another one, just absolute legend. But is likely on the backstretch of his career, unfortunately, racing since, I believe, 2005. Denny Hamlin likely in the backstretch. Joey Logano could be, depending on how much longer he races. But I think Keselowski is the last guy still in the sport whose rookie year was in the 2000s. So we got four guys who knows where they are in, at least to them, in their respective careers. Denny Hamlin on his podcast says, he's like, I don't feel like I'm any worse than I was in years past. He still races like he's a high-end talent. Brad Keselowski on Twitter saying he's not planning on going anywhere. Kyle Busch as much as he's calmed down, I think there's still that heated version of Rowdy that we had back in the day. And Joey Logano just won a championship, so as many vets that we're losing in the sport, there's still some vets who are happy to put up a fight and make lives hell for these young guns, having to earn their way in the sport still.
You have to. Yeah, you have to still earn your stripes when you're out there racing. And there's still going to be a point of where the sky is really the limit for a lot of them. And that's going to be great. And this is just something that we can still attest to. Hopefully they are trying to come into their own, and they're trying to chase down the sky being the limit for guys like Gibbs and Hocevar. While there's more eyes being turned to the sport, whatever might happen over the course of the next year or 2 years, that just gets people more riled up about it, gets more people interested, tries to get NASCAR more in the mainstream. But that's what we are just doing right now. We are looking onto it, and we're trying to be hopeful.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, we've been a lot of negative on this on this podcast in recent weeks. So I would like to look back on the 2024 season now that it's concluded. I originally was going to include a low point section of this, but I feel like I'm being a little too much of a downer.
There we go. Just end with some high points, or what you personally think was a high point, or your highest point. What do you think?
So we want to do a little maybe the highest point, or maybe just some favorite things of what happened in this past season. And I think if you just take out the playoffs, because I can go on a whole nother rant, but no one wants that.
Okay, so forget about the playoff.
Just in terms
regular season,
high points, regular season, even just any given weekend. I think some of my favorite points, that last move by Tyler Reddick at Homestead through 3 and 4, that was an exciting finish, rocketing around Ryan Blaney. Stuart Haas getting their last win out at the Southern 500 that I got to witness in person, witnessing their final win as a fan in the stands. But I think the highest high point even above the close finishes at Atlanta and
Yes.
Kansas.
Yeah, I was gonna say Atlanta one. That was such a good
Yeah.
race.
It
So
was
good.
so exciting from start to finish, that first Atlanta race. But I think the highest high point of the season for me personally was hearing Lee Diffie on his first race for NASCAR call Harrison Burton's first career win with his dad in the booth. I think it was such an emotional race, such an emotional finish, seeing Harrison Burton's family, the way they reacted, just almost inconsolable with so much joy for being able to win in the Cup Series. And people will try to discredit drivers who have only managed 1 or 2 wins in their careers. It is nearly impossible to win a NASCAR race if you are not an incredibly talented driver. If you win a NASCAR race, even if you just happen into it somehow, it is an impressive feat because you are racing against some of the greatest drivers on the planet. And Harrison Burton, in a wreck-filled race that was the second Daytona race this year, got away without a scrape on the car. That thing was clean when cars were trying to flip as much as they possibly could. So I personally think that Harrison Burton's win at Daytona was the greatest moment of the season, especially because Jeff Burton was there to enjoy the moment with his son.
I mean, even just watching a lot of these races with you, I would say that really it's a tough one to top. I mean, just thinking about it. And this still just, you got to throw a quick negative in there, just to go over the sport overall. There wasn't a super high amount or, even a big handful of really memorable moments. Yeah, the photo finishes, some of the really close races, some tight racing. There was a lot of good ones throughout the year. And I think that one really was second to none. That was a special moment. We got to watch that one. So that was really, really something special. But I would just say from a personal standpoint throughout this year, it has been great to start this podcast with you and actually to see my first race down here in South Carolina, getting to go to Darlington on Mother's Day. That was great. Got to, meet my favorite driver in Reddick. Got him to sign a pair of shoes. That was pretty nifty.
Pair of Jordans.
That's right. So that was pretty nifty. And just to see him go on to win the regular season title, with me being a fan of his now for, a year and a half or season and a half. But, just trying to, get into my own as a newly budding fan and cling on to a driver who I could really get behind. So that was just personally good for me. And I really am excited to, aside from everything that's going on behind the scenes, hopefully see just some of these guys, these younger guys, continue to make that strides and hopefully become, household names. That's what I want to see. It doesn't really attest to, maybe what we've just been talking about, high points of the season, but, hopefully we can make some future high points and future highlights because it really was just far and in between. There was a lot of great moments, but nothing super legendary, nothing super historic that you're gonna see played on Instagram Reels or TikToks for weeks and weeks until next season. But that is what I want to see more of. I hope we can get, as you started this out and we talked about it, those Game 7 moments.
Yeah, I am excited to see what next year will be like. If the playoffs are the same, if the playoffs are different, who is going to step up in Truex's place as another super consistent driver capable of winning at any given week? I mean, we saw him being the king of Monday Dover races whenever they were affected by rain.
That's right.
Will anyone else do that again? Or was he one of one there? Are we going to see some of these young guys who we've been waiting to break out? Are one of them going to be the next superstar? We have Josh Berry, who had 1 year in the 4 taking over for Kevin Harvick, who we only got 1 season out of him, and it was not with Stewart-Haas at their best. We have Chase Briscoe, who has shown he can win, and now going to fill in the seat at the 19 at Joe Gibbs. Noah Gragson going to a new team. Ryan Preece rumored to go to RFK Racing. I actually don't know if those rumors have been confirmed or not, but it does look like everyone at Stewart-Haas, excuse me, everyone at Stewart-Haas, the drivers at least, have found homes. Hopefully that Ryan Preece one is true, so he has a ride for next year. There's a lot of talent available in NASCAR, and the field has never been this even. And I think that is the important thing we need stars for. Because if your drivers are great, who are the best? And that in the 90s, you had a lot of guys, early 2000s. I mean, if you were good enough to consistently beat the likes of Jimmy Johnson, Jeff Gordon, Tony Stewart, Bobby Labonte, all these legends, then you were really somebody that should have been put up on a pedestal. That's why the 2003 season that people look back on, Matt Kenseth only won one race that year and still won the championship. He beat the best of the best, and I think that should be rewarded. Kurt Busch in the first year of the chase, he was still really good during that time. So next year it leaves a lot of unknowns, but in good ways, because I can't imagine going into this season that I had any inclination that it would be as crazy as it was. We had a lot of insane moments. Of course, Atlanta, that 3-wide finish. Kansas, the closest finish in NASCAR history. You had the race at Darlington, the first race at Darlington that we went to, where it looked like Tyler Reddick or Chris Buescher was going to win, and then they crash out, and Keselowski breaks a drought. You had the battle with Buescher and Van Gisbergen at Watkins Glen. There were
that's right. Many WGI, that was a good one.
Yeah, so many exciting moments, and for as much as I have complained about NASCAR over the last few weeks, there's a reason I still watch, and it's because there are things like that make me excited as a fan, knowing that there is still something to be excited about in the upcoming year. And speaking of the upcoming year, Tony and I are going to be there when they kick off at Bowman Gray Stadium up in Winston-Salem.
That's right, man. Going up to North Carolina to jumpstart the season. I'm glad we got tickets. Very much looking forward to that in February. Hopefully it's not too chilly.
Yeah, I don't know what winter's like in northern North Carolina.
They could still have some ice storms, so we'll see. We'll see. I said weather could possibly play a factor, so I'm interested to see if it's just going to be a nice day. That'd be nice, but we'll have to keep our eyes on the forecast.
Yeah, that would be a real interesting one. I don't know if NASCAR's ever seen snow delays before. But
no, I don't think so.
We'll have to hope that we're just a little chilly that day and maybe not covered in ice.
Yes.
But excited for that. That's the first exhibition race I'll ever be going to. I've not been to an all-star race or a Budweiser shootout, as they were known back in the day, or now as they're known as the Clash. So obviously I've never been to Bowman Gray either, which is a historic racetrack for local scenes. And as we continue on what happens next year, as we have done all season, at least as long as we've been doing this podcast, we've predicted winners of the next race on the schedule. And the next points-paying race on the schedule is, of course, the Daytona 500. The 2025 Daytona 500. Who knows what that's even going to look like? Because if these cars are the same, it's going to likely be a wreck fest like it was in July or August, I mean. And if these cars look different, then we'll really have truly nothing to go off of. But it's not an even year, so I think I can start but voting against Joey Logano in these things. As for who could win the 500, my Hail Mary right now, this is pretty tough, but I think Christopher Bell. He has had a good career thus far ever since he's come into the sport. He has been in position to win a championship a few times, likely should have, but I think if he can get a Daytona 500, I think that would be huge for his career, obviously, winning the biggest race on the schedule, getting a Toyota back into victory lane there, and I think the last time a Toyota won was Denny Hamlin in 2020. I believe that's right. It would be nice if Martin Truex could do it, but I'm not super confident in a part-time schedule getting a win, but it would be interesting. We have Shane Van Gisbergen going full-time next year, so it would be something if in his first time as a full-time racer he could get a win. But I think Christopher Bell could win there and get his first Daytona 500 and another one for Joe Gibbs. Get them back on track.
Well, and I think it is going to be a little bit more to the point of some guys just that have the familiarity. Going into the season, you don't know who's going to rise above. Sometimes it takes guys a little bit longer to settle in. And someone like Van Gisbergen as well, who's still so talented at road courses, probably is going to need to just get a little bit more up to speed for things that are not road course related, any of the other tracks. But to this, I want to go with the win for this point of the season. Still going to be a guy that's been hanging around for a little while. Might be trying to finally close it on a championship. I'm going to go with Hamlin. I'm going to go with Hamlin winning that Daytona for next season with the lob and the Hail Mary, whatever we're calling it. Yeah, way down the road. We got a while to go to the Daytona 500, but he's going to be my pick, at least for right now.
Yeah, I think things could shape up depending on who goes where, if there's any big crew adjustments in the future, and maybe just come post Super Bowl weekend, I will feel differently. But at the moment, I think Christopher Bell could get it done. There are a few guys who have yet to win Daytona 500 in the field that would do crazy things for their legacy. Kyle Busch still looking for a Daytona 500. Kyle Larson looking for a good finish at Daytona, period. We had William Byron win this year with Alex Bowman close. Ross Chastain was there. Bubba Wallace has finished up there a few times, so he could very well be up there. Tyler Reddick's shown he's a great super speedway racer. A lot of guys who could do it, but at a track like Daytona, it's anybody's game. You could see a guy get his first career win, as we did with Trevor Bayne back in 2011. So we can end up with a guy like Ty Gibbs, who has shown he's pretty good at super speedways. Maybe Carson Hocevar can put it together. He's been clean at super speedway races, not so much super competitive, but keeping the car running on the lead lap when the checkered flag flies. It could be anybody, as it is with every super speedway race. But as we come to a close, episode 13, our final one, at least for this first season. Next year, our first full season of the Palmetto Pitstop.
That's right, and that's going to be something that we'll be investing in, gathering thoughts during the off season, hopefully adding in some bonus content as well. And this is just going to be something that we keep the page going with, keeping the page afloat with. And also, before we close it out, I do want to give a quick prediction. Just want you to rattle off 3 drivers, and I'll do the same. Or you can do maybe 4 if you want, just because of the current format of the playoff. But you know what? Let's just forget about that for a minute and just go with 3. So give me your 3 drivers. Pick right now. Way too early pick for 3 drivers that you could have as your champion going into next season.
All right. So picking if Daytona 500 was a Hail Mary, this one is the equivalent of the Hail Melon, just full sending it all the way down the road to this time next year, the Final Four, if this is still the format. 3 drivers.
Let's go 3. So just to give you another further nod, not to the playoff, let's just pick 3 drivers instead of 4.
Okay, so I'll play it safe for 2 of them, and then I'll try to get a little creative with the other 2.
Okay.
So I think the safe 2. Kyle Larson probably should have been there this year. I think he's not going anywhere. He's still plenty of years left. That flagship number 5, he's not going anywhere but up. His legacy is still far, far, far from over. And if he's won even more races next year, by this time, I would not be surprised. So Kyle Larson picked number 1. Number 2. Of all the drivers in the field, it's hard to see who's going to fall off and who's going to rise.
I know. That's the point. But again, it's just way too early predictions, man.
So I'll do a little bit more of maybe a deeper push than just a safe bet, but I think a good, somewhat risky but not crazy prediction, Christopher Buescher.
Okay.
Chris Buescher. He did well last year with a few wins to get himself in the playoffs. He had the wins at Richmond and Daytona, and he had the win this year at Watkins Glen. So he's proven he could win in the playoffs if he can just, get to the playoffs. And he's kind of puts himself in good position so long as he doesn't have as bad luck as he had this year. But he could make noise, I think, if he can. Now that he has that playoff experience and he has this year now that probably lit a fire under him. Him making the Final Four and potentially winning a championship wouldn't seem super far off for me.
I'll say right now that's going to be one of my picks. So I'll just put that out there. So no shockers there. Yeah, no, I liked how Busher ran this year, and he was very, very consistent. Didn't get that win, but he was easily a top 10 driver, and I could see him making that leap next year. Go ahead with your next one.
Yeah, and I guess if I want to get exciting, I'm going to go on a full reversal, 2019 Denny Hamlin style. I think Kyle Busch, a return to form in Richard Childress Racing,
Okay.
a year off, could be exactly what he needs, similar to Denny Hamlin when he had that winless season in 2018, and it seemed like he became a different man almost, and started winning a lot. Kyle Busch is too competitive, and I think he's still a few years from retirement. I don't think we have seen the best of Rowdy. I don't know if we'll see a return to form in that 8 car. At least what we've seen this year. Richard Childress Racing was not super competitive year-round. But I think if Kyle Busch can be Kyle Busch, he just needs to get his head focused on that. But I don't see any reason why. If Joey Logano can do it with a 17th place average finish, Kyle Busch can happen into some wins and get his at least another appearance in the championship for it.
Oh, he definitely has the capacity to. Trying to come out with a chip on your shoulder, and you know that you're not going to be racing consistently too much longer. Could definitely light a fire under some of these guys, and could easily see that with Busch down the stretch. So I do like that as your third pick. Nothing too surprising from mine, just going off. Busher, of course, one that we both agree on. I really can see him in that Final Four. He was racing really well. I'm thinking that he could just find that extra gear next year, get a win, or maybe even 2 during the season. He definitely seems like a driver on the rise. So that's who I'm going to have with my first pick. Second, I'm going to pencil my guy Reddick in there. I think that he still has, the sky's the limit for him. He had a fantastic season, regular season champ. A little lackluster early in the playoffs, but still found his way to the Final Four. If he could try to find that dominance during the postseason and have some good races as much as he did during the regular season, or he could have easily had some more wins. If he had a little bit better of luck, easily could have had 1 or 2 more wins. I could easily see him, solidifying his spot and being there, regardless of what the format is. And also, my third pick will be Bell, and he was not in the Final Four. Super consistent driver, though. He just could not find that consistency just at the end of the year. Sometimes you put so much effort, you put a great foot forward during the regular season, and just to go off everything we've been talking about, it still continues to be that problem that some of these guys that have had such great years can only be rewarded so much by the end of the year if you get those wins, if you navigate your way through the playoff, for better, for worse. But he is definitely one I could see further making that leap and trying to catch up with probably who's going to be your regular season favorite next year in Larson, and maybe we'll see some other shakeups. Who knows with some of ththese younger guys? But those will be my picks. Busher, one the same as you. Reddick and Bell. Way too early predictions as we look on to 2025.
Yep, and with that, I believe that's the last of our episodes here in year 2024. Thank you guys very much for being with us for the start of this podcast and the Northern South in general.
Yeah, trying to get this up and running more so.
But we've have our a growing success so far. Very happy with where we are as a new channel. And if you think you're going to miss us too much, you can always tune into our brand new podcast that will keep our throats going through the NASCAR off season with the Ladies First podcast. Tony, that one's your love child there. You want to talk a little about what has been talked about so far in the first 2 episodes, what you hope to accomplish for the podcast down the road through the 2024-2025 season.
Yeah, of course. We live in South Carolina where racing has historically been huge, but just one of the big up and coming things has really been women's basketball. And, you're not always going to see the meshing of fans across the basketball and racing spectrum, unless maybe we're talking about Michael Jordan, as we did before. But, I have fallen in love with South Carolina and the Gamecocks and that university. And one of the big reasons for me personally to learn more about Columbia and the university was their women's basketball team, who has found incredible success, winning national titles, led by Dawn Staley, who I've been a fan of for, a good while because she has Philly ties. And I'm originally from Pennsylvania before making the move down here. So, it definitely has been more of a passion project of mine to start it up and trying to get you on the South Carolina bandwagon for the almost couple of years, that you'll be approaching living down here and, breaking down a lot of different factors of the team, of their impact on the state, the impact on the sport, how we are finally seeing more of a rise of just women in sports in general and actually getting that national attention and media coverage that has been there before, and betting lines for women's sports that no one gave a damn about. Like you couldn't bet on women's sports. Now that's actually is a big thing that bookies are working on, especially with basketball. So there's more coverage to be had, more money to put in people's pocket, and just trying to highlight as well athletes that, especially from the women's side of things, haven't really had the chance to have a spotlight for a long time because so many people saw just women's sports as more of the joke side of sports as opposed to something that should be respected. And of all the things I am a sports junkie for, whether it be racing, whether it be football, baseball, basketball, etc., this is something that has definitely been inspiring to me, which is why I like to talk about it, and happy to rope you in as well. And again, that is ladies first for South Carolina. Just a little play on words of how dominant their women's basketball team has been for the Gamecocks.
Yeah, and whereas you have been sort of a seasoned fan way back in the day, but coming back into NASCAR, you get to see me be utterly clueless in women's basketball.
Yeah, but you know ball though. It's just,
I know basketball, but I know ball and hoop. That's the thing with me. Like if the South Carolina Gamecocks women's team was football, I would know. Oh yeah, of course, I know how that works.
Well,
Basketball, this is gonna be a brand new experience for me. Of course, I have my NBA team in the New York Knicks, and of course now the champion Liberty up there.
Yeah, that's right. I'm WNBA champion.
Yeah, that I became the day I found out that New York had a women's basketball team.
Yeah.
Excited to be along for the full season ride this year. I kind of got on the bandwagon a little last year as the March Madness started. That's my most experience with basketball, is watching March Madness every year. So getting to know the in-depth things about basketball in general, learning the names of women's basketball stars, the big names, the heroes, the villains, the coaches, and everyone else. I look forward to seeing where I am as comparison to my first appearance on that podcast versus the end of the season. We'll see how far
Exactly. So that's what we're going to be working on. We will have hopefully some bonus content, racing coverage. I know we want to have an initiative to try and visit some abandoned racetracks here in South Carolina. So in terms of transitioning some of these to other platforms, I would definitely like to get on Apple Music and Spotify and things such as that, especially if we're going to start bringing on guests for anything or talking to other people. But, hopefully we'll continue to grow this YouTube page with the joint effort of both podcasts and just also the play on words, because we are both originally from the North, but have settled happily here in South Carolina. So on our YouTube page at the Northern South is where this content will be. Thank you again for listening here and stopping by the Palmetto Pitstop. Adam, you got a final thought?
Next time we'll see you, will be a little chilly in North Carolina. Thank you again for sticking with us all this last probably quarter of the season, these last 13 weeks. We know it hasn't always been pretty in terms of what calls have been made, in terms of our takes on said calls, but the reason we are so passionate about it is because we do love the sport of NASCAR and sport of racing and motorsports in general. So thank you guys very much for being here, and I can't wait to see you guys again in February, and maybe I get to see over on Ladies First.
All right. Thanks again, everybody. You have stopped by the Palmetto Pit Stop. We'll see what else we got cooking as we head on towards Thanksgiving this upcoming winter. But right now, thanks again for being here. We will see you next time. And for the return of this official podcast, that's going to be in February, and we are looking forward to it. Thanks again.